The gunshot cracks through the quiet street like a hammer striking bone. Ethan Cole doesn't hear the echo. He only sees Ranger fall. For half a second, his mind refuses to interpret what his eyes are showing him: the way Ranger's front legs buckle, the way his body twists, the way his training vest skids against the concrete. The groceries drop from Ethan's arms. Plastic tears. Oranges roll into the gutter. Ranger? The dog doesn't answer. Ethan is on his knees instantly, hands sliding into fur already soaked warm and slick. The world shrinks to the sound of Ranger's breathing, short, broken gasps that stutter and fade with terrifying speed. Across the street, someone screams. Ethan looks up. Hoa Karen stands on her porch. Barefoot. Perfect posture. A small pistol trembling in both hands like she hasn't quite decided whether to drop it or use it again. "I thought he was going to attack me," she says. Her voice is thin. Rehearsed. Already practiced. Ranger tries to lift his head. Fails. No, Ethan presses his hands harder, useless pressure against ruin. "Stay with me, buddy. Stay with me." Hoa slowly lowers the gun. A neighbor runs toward them. Another neighbor starts recording. And Ranger, who once pulled Ethan from a burning vehicle in Fallujah, who learned commands while Ethan relearned how to walk, lets out one final breath and goes still. 3 hours later, the driveway is clean. Power washed. Like nothing ever happened. They take Ranger away in a black veterinary transport van. Ethan watches the door close. It sounds too final. Like a coffin lid. The police officer, young, apologetic, unsteady, keeps saying the same words. "We have to treat this as a self-defense incident until evidence suggests otherwise." Ethan's hands are still red. "She shot my service dog," he says. "Yes, sir, I understand. She didn't even run." "Yes, sir. I have made 3 formal complaints about her threats." The officer hesitates. "That doesn't appear in the system." Of course it doesn't. Hoa Karen sits on her porch again as they leave. Wrapped in a blanket now. Shaking just enough to look believable. When she sees Ethan looking back, she flinches. Late. Too late. That's when he knows. It wasn't fear. It was preparation. Ethan doesn't sleep that night. Ranger's leash still hangs by the door. The food bowl is half full. The house keeps producing sounds that aren't there anymore: ghost footsteps, imagined breathing, echoes of company where silence has moved in. At 2:17 a.m., a soft mechanical click comes from outside. Not loud. Intentional. Ethan moves without thinking. Old instincts firing before grief can paralyze him. He eases the curtain aside an inch. Hoa's porch light is on. Her front camera has been repositioned. And his side gate, locked when he checked it an hour earlier, now stands open. Nothing is missing. Nothing is touched. But someone has crossed the line. The first letter arrives the following morning. Not in the mailbox. Taped directly to his front door. Homeowner violation: unregistered animal. Aggressive behavior. Final notice. The date stamp stops his breath. Issued 15 days ago. He never received it. Ethan steps into the street and looks straight at Hoa's house. She's already watching. 12 years earlier, Ethan Cole was a battlefield intelligence analyst. He learned to map human behavior under fire. Learned how patterns form long before danger announces itself. Learned that the first sign of an ambush is never the bullets, it's the quiet before them. Normal life is supposed to be quieter than war. But this quiet feels engineered. His job technically still exists: security consulting for private infrastructure firms. He works from home now. Diagnoses weaknesses in corporate systems. Digital and physical. And suddenly, his own life looks like a breached perimeter. By the 4th day, the signs stack up. A second HOA letter appears: noise complaints logged during hours he was demonstrably not home. A tow warning for a car that isn't his. A tagged survey marker on his lawn he didn't authorize. Hoa expands her sitting routine. Always on the porch. Always watching. Sometimes smiling. Sometimes not. Ethan installs a cheap motion sensor that night. It triggers at 3:41 a.m. Someone is inside his yard. The service dog paperwork arrives on day 6. A formal verification that Ranger was medically registered, behavior tested, legally protected. Too late to save him. Early enough to expose a lie. On the 7th day, Ethan finally snaps out of the fog. He opens a fresh notebook. First page, date, time, event. He starts writing everything down. City records come next. Public HOA filings. Financial disclosures. Settlement histories. Hoa Karen has been HOA president for 14 years. Longer than any regulation allows. Yet no election challenges appear in record. Because the challengers' homes were foreclosed. Every single one. The 8th night, a black sedan idles at the end of the street for 90 minutes. No plates. Engine running. Lights off. Ethan went to sleep with Ranger for years because the dog interrupted the night. Pulled him out of flashbacks. Braced against his shaking. Now the nights are open. And something is moving through them. On day 10, foreclosure warnings begin arriving for Ethan. 30-day review. Non-compliance. Aggressive animal history. Hoa appears at the fence line late that afternoon. First time she speaks to him since the shooting. "You should have controlled your dog," she says calmly. Ethan grips the fence. "You executed him." Her smile flickers. Just for half a second. Then it's back. "You're making this harder than it has to be." "For who?" Ethan asks. "For you," she says. "This neighborhood values harmony." She turns and walks away. The black sedan rolls slowly past behind her. That night, Ethan checks his old email backups. There it is. The first complaint. Time-stamped. Submitted. Received. Then removed. Someone with access erased them. Hoa doesn't just run the HOA. She controls the channels. On the 12th day, Ethan installs 3 hidden cameras. 2 face the driveway. 1 faces the side gate. The first recording is captured at 1:08 a.m. A man in a dark jacket enters his yard with professional calm. Checks the cameras. Looks directly at one. And smiles. By the 15th day, Ethan no longer doubts it. Ranger's death was not an act of panic. It was a clearance. A removal. Hoa didn't fire that gun as a frightened neighbor. She fired it as someone protecting an operation. The final confirmation comes in a simple envelope. No return address. Inside, a printed map of his street. 5 houses circled in red. Including his. Including 2 already empty. And 1 circled twice. Hoas. At the bottom, 1 handwritten word. Soon. Ethan sits at his kitchen table long after midnight. Ranger's collar lies in front of him. He threads it slowly through his hands. For the first time since the gunshot, the grief hardens into something else. Clarity. Whoever Hoa Karen truly is. She made one critical mistake. She chose a war veteran with nothing left to lose. And she pulled the trigger first. The first rule of hunting something smarter than you is simple. Don't let it know you're hunting. Ethan spends the next 3 days pretending to fall apart. He stops mowing the lawn. Lets mail pile up on the counter. Misses 2 client calls. Leaves his porch light off at night. He becomes what Hoa expects him to become, a wounded man sinking quietly into isolation. But inside, everything sharpens. At 6 a.m. every morning, he reviews camera footage. At 7 a.m., he studies public records. By noon, he's mapping patterns. And by midnight, he's connecting dots that were never meant to be seen together. The map in the envelope is his starting point. 5 circled houses. All of them owned for more than a decade. All of them suddenly targeted within a 6-week window. Foreclosure filings appear almost simultaneous. Different violations. Same handwriting style in the inspection notes. Same processing clerk initials. M.I. Mark Ives. Assistant Director of City Zoning. Ethan pulls zoning histories. For years, the city has publicly denied any transit expansion through this district. But internal variance requests tell another story. Private adjustments. Conditional developmental easements. Temporary rezoning for future infrastructure compatibility. All signed by Mark Ives. All benefiting properties that later pass through HOA enforcement. And all of those properties eventually land in the same set of shell companies. 3 LLCs. 1 trust. Different names. Same mailing address. Hoa Karen's private legal firm. The HOA isn't enforcing rules. It's selecting targets. On night 4, the man returns. Dark jacket. Baseball cap pulled low. Face still unseen. This time, he checks the side gate first. Then the windows. Then the power meter. Ethan watches from the dark, finger tight on his phone camera. When the man finally looks up, their eyes nearly meet. The man freezes. Then he casually adjusts the cap and walks away like nothing happened. At exactly 3:19 a.m., the power goes out. Ethan doesn't panic. He switches to battery backups. Cameras stay live. The blackout lasts 47 minutes. During that window, someone accesses the HOA database. Removes 3 foreclosure challenges. Including Ethan's appeal that he never filed. Someone is trying to rewrite the future faster than he can expose the past. By morning, Ethan knows he can't do this alone. He needs someone who understands the value of evidence and the danger of power. He reaches out to Lena Ortiz. She hasn't covered corruption in years. Burned too many bridges. Editors moved her to safe human interest stories. But when Ethan sends her one still frame. Hoa raising the gun. Ranger calm. Execution clear. Her reply comes in under 10 minutes. Where can we meet? They sit in a diner 20 miles from the neighborhood. Neutral ground. Daylight. Ethan slides over a manila folder. Maps. Financial breakdowns. Camera stills. Property transfers. Lena flips through it slowly. Her journalist instincts wake up like something that's been asleep too long. This isn't just HOA predation, she says quietly. This is infrastructure laundering. Meaning? Ethan asks. Meaning someone is clearing land for a project the city hasn't announced yet, quietly, cheaply, and without public resistance. And Ranger? Ethan asks. She hesitates. Then says the words that cut deeper than the gunshot ever did. Your dog wasn't collateral. He was an obstacle. On the way home, Ethan notices they're being followed. Same black sedan. Different driver. They don't tail aggressively. They just let him know they're there. Predators testing if the prey understands it's being watched. That night, Ethan sets a trap. He uploads falsified HOA compliance documents through a public terminal, data that suggests a key property Hoa wants will avoid foreclosure. Within 8 hours, Mark Ives submits an emergency zoning override affecting that exact address. The move exposes the connection. It also confirms panic. They're reacting now. Not controlling. The next escalation isn't subtle. It's personal. Ethan returns from the grocery store to find his front door ajar. No forced entry. Every drawer has been opened. Every cabinet searched. Not ransacked. Scanned. On his kitchen table sits his notebook, open to the page where he logged Ranger's death. On that page, someone has written 4 words: "Stop digging or bleed." For the first time since the shooting, Ethan feels real fear. Not helpless fear. Targeted fear. Lena runs the story through her editor. It gets killed in less than an hour. Not spiked. Blocked. Legal flagged. Mysterious source pressure. That night, she's fired. 20 minutes later, her car is vandalized. Ethan knows then. They're not just suppressing information. They're shrinking the circle. The flash drive arrives 2 days later. Under his windshield wiper again. No note this time. Just raw files. It contains full HOA internal emails, HOA financial spreadsheets, a deleted police bodycam clip. The clip is only 14 seconds long. But it is perfect. Hoa stepping forward. Ranger sitting calmly. No charge. No threat. Just a nervous breath. And the trigger pull. Ethan sits alone in the dark and watches it twice. When he finally closes his eyes, he's not grieving anymore. He's calculating. The shell companies tie into a larger trust. The trust ties into a national development firm. The development firm has federal transport contracts. The conspiracy was never just local. Hoa wasn't the top. She was the gate. The black sedan stops idling after that. Instead, someone knocks on Ethan's door in daylight. A city compliance officer. Fake ID. Fake authority. Real intent. Ethan doesn't open it. The man slips a citation into the doorframe instead. Failure to respond will result in forced entry for property hazard inspection. The clock is accelerating now. Lena arranges a data dump backup across 3 servers. If anything happens to either of them, everything goes public. On the final night of Chapter 2, Ethan stands in Ranger's old spot by the door. He straps on the empty harness by habit. The weight surprises him. He checks the cameras. 6 angles. All live. The man in the dark jacket appears again. But this time, he isn't alone. 3 silhouettes move at the edge of the frame. And the black sedan rolls into view behind them. Not hiding anymore. Not patient anymore. The quiet trap phase is over. Now comes pressure. The first siren Ethan hears that morning isn't aimed at him. That's the only reason he's still alive. At 5:12 a.m., 3 shadowed figures move through his yard. The black sedan idles at the curb without lights. The men don't rush. They don't need to. The citation taped to his door gives them legal cover within the hour. But the siren, distant, accidental, changes the rhythm. The figures retreat. Not defeated. Delayed. By sunrise, every piece is in position. Lena's data dump is scheduled across multiple release points, newsrooms, nonprofit transparency groups, federal oversight portals. It's set for 11:47 a.m. For minutes before the city council meeting begins. Just enough time to make sure no one can stop the unmasking. City Hall is packed. Transit expansion vote night. What was once denied as a rumor now sits polished and smiling on the agenda schedule. Quiet acquisition has made the public push possible. And Hoa Karen, perfect HOA queen, sits in the front row, dressed in white, posture flawless. Cameras everywhere. Developers whisper along the walls. Activists fill the back seats. Lena stands in the press section, officially fired but still carrying a camera. Ethan stands at the rear exit. Invisible. Waiting. At 11:43 a.m., his phone vibrates once. Uploads confirmed, Lena. Public comment opens at 11:53. Hoa rises immediately. The room listens. She speaks in calm, measured tones about safety, order, and neighborhood preservation. She references crime statistics that don't actually exist. She frames foreclosure as community renewal. Applause flows. Ethan watches the council members' faces. Some know. Some only suspect. All of them are tied to what's coming. Mark Ives takes the podium next. He's sweating already. He presents zoning approvals that technically shouldn't yet be legal. But procedures only matter when nobody is watching. And now, everyone is watching. At exactly 12:01 p.m., Lena's story goes live. At first it's just vibration. Phones. One by one. Buzzing throughout the chamber like insects waking. Then the murmurs ripple. Then the screen behind the dais lights without permission. A projector override. Ethan steps forward into the aisle. "My name is Ethan Cole," he says into the live microphone Lena's secretly patched into. The room quiets. "I used to work battlefield intelligence. Pattern detection. Threat analysis. Today, I'll be presenting the threat you were all told didn't exist." A council member reaches for the screen controls. They're locked out. The first image appears. A map of the neighborhood. 5 red circles. Then foreclosure timelines. Then shell corporations. Then trust structures. Then developer contracts. Gasps bloom across the chamber. Hoa turns in her seat. Slowly. She looks directly at Ethan for the first time since the gunshot. No fear. Just calculation. "Before you label this a property dispute," Ethan says, "you should understand how it began." The footage loads. Ranger fills the screen. Sitting. Calm. The vest visible. The leash loose. Hoa steps into frame. Raises the gun. Fires. The sound echoes through digital speakers into human silence. Someone in the audience sobs. "That was not fear," Ethan says, voice steady. "That was execution." Mark Ives bolts first. He makes it 2 steps before security grabs him. When they push him back into his seat, a folder spills from his hands. Marked, Federal Transit Corridor, Private. The room ignites. Shouting. Questions. Chaos. Hoa finally stands. "You don't understand what you're interfering with," she says calmly. "You think this was about houses?" Ethan walks forward 1 step at a time. "When you shot Ranger," he says, "you thought you erased your mistake." Hoa's composure cracks for half a second. Then her hand disappears into her purse. Lena is first to shout. "Gun!" Security surges. Hoa lunges, not at Ethan, but for the nearest exit. She moves faster than expected. Mark Ives uses the chaos to break free. 2 men move from opposite aisles toward Ethan. Not security. Not police. Private. Clean. The chamber turns into a storm of bodies. People screaming. Doors slamming. Ethan pivots as the first attacker reaches him. Old reflex. Hard elbow. Disarm. The man collapses into a chair. The second reaches for a weapon. Before he can draw, federal marshals flood the room. Black jackets. Clear voices. Born of warrants that were signed minutes after the data hit federal oversight servers. Hoa freezes mid-step. Mark Ives collapses completely. The handcuffs close fast. Cold. Final. Hoa is escorted past Ethan. For the first time, real fear breaks through her face. "This doesn't end with me," she whispers. Ethan doesn't blink. "It already did it for you." Outside, sunlight hits like something new. Council members are detained. Developers vanish into legal firestorms. News vans stack like dominoes. Lena emerges shaking with adrenaline. They don't touch. They just stand beside each other as the world catches up. By nightfall, the story circles the globe. Hoa land fraud ring exposed. Transit corridor scandal. Service dog execution reignites accountability debate. Hoa's face becomes universally recognizable. Her empire collapses hourly. But victory never feels loud. It feels hollow first. That night, Ethan returns to the house. For the first time in weeks, no one is watching. No footsteps. No idling cars. No shadows at the fence. He stands in the driveway where Ranger fell. The concrete stain never fully came out. It rarely does. At 2:14 a.m., his phone buzzes with a secure message. No sender ID. Just 5 words. You exposed the doorway. Then coordinates. Not local. Not even the same state. Ethan exhales slowly. Hoa was never the architect. She was a node. Hoa Karen pleads not guilty. That is the first headline Ethan reads the morning after the arrests. It feels almost insulting, like a final performance from someone who lived by performance. Beneath it, a cascade of secondary headlines unfolds in real time. Zoning director arrested on federal corruption charges. Private development firm under DOJ investigation. Hundreds of wrongful foreclosures under review. The city wakes up inside a scandal it never knew it was sleeping through. By week's end, the HOA is dissolved. Not restructured. Not audited. Erased. Court injunctions freeze all foreclosures retroactively. Families begin returning to houses they never thought they'd see again. Some homes are stripped bare. Some are burned ghosts. Some are exactly as they were left, mugs still in cabinets, dust outlining old picture frames like fossils of former lives. At the center of it all, in press footage that loops every hour, is Hoa. Smaller now. No makeup. No smile. Ethan testifies twice. Once for the civil inquiry. Once for the federal grand jury. He gives them everything: the notebooks, the footage, the flash drive, the night logs, the maps, the backups Lena built into redundant servers they still haven't fully dismantled. They ask him why he didn't walk away. He tells them the truth. Because she didn't just kill my dog, he says. She tried to erase my life. The room goes silent at that. Lena becomes impossible to ignore. She doesn't go back to lifestyle reporting. She doesn't go back at all. Instead, 3 national outlets offer her investigative desks on the same day. She chooses the smallest one, the one that lets her move without corporate gravity. They named the series after Ranger. The Ranger Files. It becomes curriculum in journalism schools within the year. On a Thursday morning in early spring, Ethan wakes to barking. Real barking. Not imagined. Not remembered. He sits up in the dark too fast, heart racing. Then he hears it again. A puppy. Outside. On his porch. The shelter volunteer is nervous. We couldn't keep him, she says. He wouldn't calm down anywhere else. But he stopped when we pulled up here. The puppy is clumsy. All feet and ears. Head too big for its body. A scar already forms on one back leg from life starting hard. Ethan kneels. The puppy presses into him immediately. Untrained. Uncertain. Alive. He doesn't name him Ranger. He doesn't try to replace anything. But for the first time since the gunshot, something warm moves back into the silence. 3 months later, a brass plaque appears at the entrance of the neighborhood walkway. It isn't big. It isn't dramatic. It simply reads, Ranger's Way. In honor of service, loyalty, and truth. No one admits who ordered it. Everyone knows who it's for. Hoa accepts a plea deal before trial. 27 years. Markives testifies against the development firm executives and disappears into witness protection inside a week. Several city officials resign before indictments can reach them. Others are less fast. Two die waiting. Natural causes, the headlines say. Lena doesn't believe that. Neither does Ethan. Life settles. Not back to normal, but forward. Ethan takes fewer consulting contracts. He volunteers at the VA twice a week. Teaches pattern recognition to younger vets who don't yet know how sharp their instincts still are. At night, he still checks locks. Still checks corners. But now there is also the sound of another heartbeat in the house. 6 months to the day after the City Hall exposure, Ethan receives the envelope. It isn't under his wiper this time. It's placed gently in his mailbox. No stamp. No return address. Just his name. Handwritten. Careful. Inside is a single photograph. Satellite imagery. A coastal city he doesn't recognize. New developments. Fresh foundations. A wide empty corridor carved through neighborhoods like a surgical incision. At the edge of the corridor is a familiar pattern. 5 properties circled in red. The same spacing. The same geometry. At the bottom of the image, typed clean and small. Different gate. Same corridor. Ethan doesn't tell Lena right away. He doesn't call the FBI. Not yet. He sits at the kitchen table with the photo. With the puppy asleep at his feet. With Ranger's old collar still hanging by the door. And he finally understands what Hoa meant. She was never the architect. She was a regional node. A caretaker. A gatekeeper for a machine that doesn't announce itself as evil because it doesn't need to. It moves through zoning boards. Through grant approvals. Through transportation commissions. It doesn't use guns unless it has to. And even then, it hires fear to pull the trigger. 2 weeks later, the FBI releases a statement. Multiple unrelated transit projects are under routine compliance review nationwide. No comment on scope. No comment on historical linkage. No comment on casualties. Lena reads it 3 times and sends only one message to Ethan. It's bigger than we thought. He replies with, everything always is. The following spring, Ethan drives west. Not running. Not chasing. Reconnaissance. He doesn't take the puppy. He leaves him with a neighbor who finally speaks to him again. The highway opens. Mile after mile of space where silence no longer feels predatory. At a fuel stop outside state lines, he notices a familiar decal on a parked black sedan. Not the same vehicle. Not the same plates. But the same company. Same contractor. Same silence in the engine idle. Ethan doesn't stare. He doesn't flinch. He just memorizes it. That night, from a motel balcony overlooking a coastal development zone, Ethan watches floodlights carve a neighborhood into neat white shapes. Surveyors move like ants between stakes. Security patrols in clean lines. Orderly. Legal. Efficient. Someone here has already been erased. They just don't know it yet. His phone vibrates once. A burner number. No caller ID. Just a single message. You opened one door. He types back slowly. You left a trail. No response follows. Ethan remains on the balcony long after the lights shut off. He doesn't reach for a weapon. He reaches for his notebook. Date. Time. Location. Event begins to form beneath his pen. Miles away, in a federal detention facility, Hoa Karen stares at a blank wall. No porch. No cameras. No control. Just echoing footsteps in a corridor she can't influence. For the first time in her life, she isn't watching anything. She is being watched. Back on the coastline, the wind carries construction dust across the future. Ethan closes the notebook. And somewhere between grief and purpose, between loss and motion, he finally allows himself one quiet certainty. Ranger didn't die for nothing. He was the first cut in a pattern meant to stay invisible. And now that pattern has been seen.